Welcome everyone, I'm AJ Barce. I'm one of your instructional technologists here at Western. You can find me on the second floor of Haggard Hall, right behind the Student Technology Center in Haggard Hall 225. And be sure to stop by the Student Tech Center on the second floor. We're open Monday through Sunday, 7 days a week, and we're here to help you with any technology concerns, or if you need workshops like this one. We have all of our workshops available online at stc.ww.edu, and you can sign up for them. They're free. For this workshop, what we're going to do is look at setting up with your WordPress for Western account. Now, WordPress for Western is simply a WordPress installation that you're able to run and install while you're here at Western, and it's free. And you can have as many of them as you want. So for instance, let's say you have a faculty that is requiring you to make a website. You can spin one up for that class. You can set up your personal portfolio or professional portfolio, maybe that thing before you decide to leave Western. And it's easy. And I'm going to walk you through exactly how to do it. So the first thing we need to do is go to wp.wwu.edu. And when you're here, this stands for wordpress.western.edu. And you'll notice that we have three big buttons. Red button, create your blog. This is where we're going to start today if you've never been on our service before. Request a site. This is for those on campus who maybe you're part of a department and you're looking at spinning up a WordPress site for your department. This will walk you through those steps. And if you're returning back after you've pushed the big red button or green button, the big blue button is to log in and get to the sites that you already have or you've been added to. So for this, what we're going to do is start with the big red button. And when we do, you'll notice that we get this prompt that says you must log in first. Go ahead and click where it says log in. Now, once you get passed through, it'll take a couple of seconds, and what it'll do is bring you to our self-service portal to sign up for your website. What we're going to look at is these four areas. It's really quick and easy, and I'm going to show you where to go. So on site name, you'll notice that everybody here at Western gets wp.wwu.edu/. That is the domain of your site while you're here at Western. So first things first, we're going to go ahead and put in a domain. So the domain name or site name is where your site lives. I usually tell people to start with their username. So for instance, mine's Barce A, and that's just because whatever your username is unique to you. If you use just your first and last name, which is my second go-to, but perhaps somebody else before you has had your name. So it's always, it's always best to kind of either go with your first and last name or your username. What you're not able to do is put things like special characters like periods, dashes, capitalizations, or anything like that, because it's the internet. The internet hates that kind of thing. So what we're going to do for the intents of this workshop, what I'm going to do is just use my username, Barce A. Site title is different than your site name. Site name is the URL, the thing that goes across the top in your web browser. And once you pick this, by the way, it's yours. It's yours for as long as you're here at Western. The only way that you're able to change your site name is if you delete your site and copy it over to a new one. So just keep that in mind. Whatever you pick, and if you get started with it, be sure it's something that you want to keep, not something weird like Star Lord Kitten, which I used to have. Anyway, let's go ahead and let's change that back to something a little bit more professional. Barce A. Site title, on the other hand, this you can change. This is just the title across your website. I could call this AJ Barce, perhaps my credentials. And again, site title we can change, site name we can't. Site language, we have a lot of the preset language packs that are built into WordPress. If English is not your native language, this might help you interface with WordPress in building your website. There's quite a few. The common question I get is, if you select your site language, does that translate your site? No, that would be magic. It'd be really cool magic, but no, this only changes the interface, this black bar that we're going to see across the top as we're building our site. Your content, if you write it in that language, stays in that language. I'm going to prefer English for mine, and for privacy, you'll notice by default it says here only registered users will have access to your site. And this is for a multitude of reasons. The first and foremost is that as you're creating a website, perhaps you don't want the big Google, Bing, Facebook, and all that other jazz crawling your site and presenting your site before it's really ready for prime time. And so we put this on by default so that you have a level of privacy to kind of experiment in the sandbox of building your website without accidentally having a meme that you're using as a sample post show up on the internet. What I usually encourage people to do is go one step further. Let's go to only admins can visit your site. And this really only allows for you and whoever else you add to your site as an administrator So perhaps you're doing this as a group project. This is a way of being able to invite that person to your site, but they'll only have access to it if you specify they're an admin. And I'll show you what that looks like in a little bit. But also, basically, this allows for the least amount of eyes to be able to see your site as you're developing it. When you're getting ready to go public, though, what you'll do is change this privacy setting to public or search engine blocked. And this is the more common way of putting out your actual website, this wp.wwu.edu / in my case /A, so that anybody can see it. I'll show you how to do this at the end, because I usually encourage people build within a sandbox, then make public later. The other option that you have is visitors must have login, and this is really good if you're doing a class site. So for instance, let's say you're building a site for an English 101 course, and you want it to be available for people here at Western, but you don't want everybody on the web to be able to see it. Well, that's what this will allow you to do. Visitors must have login specifies that you have taken a person who is in the Western community, or anybody in the Western community, and grant them access to your site for visibility sake. So if somebody outside of Western who doesn't have a login, if they went to your site, they'd be prompted to log in using their Western credentials, and if they didn't, they wouldn't be able to see your site. Anyone else, perhaps everyone else in your class who already has Western credentials and is on WordPress for Western, if they're already logged in, they'll be able to access your site. So this is a nice in-between of public and private. This is kind of the middle ground, which is why it's in the middle. So for this workshop, I'm going to go ahead and say only admins can visit this site. Big red button that says create site. And you'll notice, hey, sorry, that site exists because I already own it. And I knew that going in, but I wanted to showcase this because if you ever do anything in your site name, this is usually the part that will always kind of bind people up when they first get started. This is where you're going to have to kind of really start to figure out how you're going to do your site so that you can figure out what does exist and what doesn't already exist on our service. So I'm going to go ahead and pick a name that already works. Congratulations, we've allowed your site and the site name, which is what I picked, and the site URL, which is also what I picked, and you can just click login to pass you through. This is Dashboard, or Dash for short. And basically think of it like My Western in the fact that it's a heads-up display of information and access points to your site. And just like My Western, you can move the modules around and collapse them as you see fit. Collapsing them is just simply grabbing this little triangle and letting them expand or contract. And moving them is simply grabbing the bar and moving them to each of the 4 columns that you have across your screen. Now you also notice you get statistics on your site. You'll notice that when you first get started, you don't have any because nobody's visiting your site because it's behind our wall. You'll also notice the name of your site, this blog, and the site title of it, the theme, the privacy, and also the storage. You'll notice that you have 500 megs or 1/2 gig of storage. Every WordPress site at Western does. And also bear in mind that your uploads, each individual file has to be less than 50 megs. So that's the only 2 real caps that you have working with our WordPress environment here. So that is Dashboard when you first log in. Across the top, a couple of nomenclature and waypoints to understand with WordPress. This black bar across the top, or it may be blue or purple or whatever color that you've picked. This always stays here when you're in building mode for WordPress. And on the left-hand side, this is your content manager. This is actually the content management side, CMS, Content Management System of WordPress. So for instance, Dashboard, that's where we're at. You'll see that we'll have posts and media and pages and users, and I'll go over the parts that typically you're going to be doing in any given class or portfolio setting that you may be using this for. So for starters, let's go ahead and let me show you a couple of key points of settings. So if we go over and we hover over settings, you notice that we get a hover. So don't just click on it, just hover over it and you'll see this pop out. And let's start with general. When you go to settings in general, this is the general settings of your WordPress site. So for instance, if you needed to change that site title, test blog, for instance. You also can adjust things like your tagline, which I'll show you what that looks like when we get to themes. You can also change your time zone in case you're writing abroad and you need your time zone to be updated. This is where you would be able to do it. Whenever you're in settings, please take note, hit the Save Changes button on the bottom. This is a common thing that I see. If you just navigate away and not hit that blue bar, you're not prompted. So if you do make any changes here, notice that it went back to what I had it before, AJ test site for real this time. Be sure to hit the blue button. Otherwise, when you navigate away, all the changes and settings that you've done won't stick. The next one I want to go through is writing. Let's take a look at writing. And this is kind of a big deal, and the reason why this video exists is because as of about a month ago, our WordPress environment has updated using what's called Core 5, and that's the latest and greatest version of WordPress. And it uses this new editor called Block Editor, and it's really, really cool. If you're familiar with Wix or Weebly or Squarespace, you're gonna feel right at home, as opposed to the classic editor. And what I typically like to do is turn on this button that says allow users to switch editor, not this one that says default editors for all users. Allow yourself to switch, and I'll show you the difference between the two interfaces. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit yes to allow users to switch editor and hit save changes. Great, now that that's been applied, now you'll be able to see the difference between the two editors. Last but not least is reading. And this is where you're gonna go when you're completely done and you're ready to change that visibility setting, that privacy setting. Notice that mine is set for only registered users. I can change that one ratchet up if I wanna make it just admins, and be sure to hit the blue Save Changes button. Or if I was ready to go public, I could change it to the allow search engines to index and allow the site to go out and have Google and Facebook and everybody else crawl it eventually. Remember, we don't, Western doesn't have control over how fast a site gets crawled by these search engines. It can take up to 2 weeks to a month for your name and the name of your site to really get into their algorithms. So do be a little bit patient. And if you're interested on how to submit your site using, especially Google, because that's kind of the one that everybody wants to be on, there is some tools through Google Analytics. And if you're interested in that, feel free to stop by my office and I can show you how you might be able to submit your site and kind of get on Google's radar a little bit faster. For this, I'm just going to go ahead and keep it at only admins can visit our site. And let's go ahead and make some content. So the first thing that everybody kind of asks is, hey, what does my site look like? Well, if we go to the top bar that always stays when you're in WordPress, you have what I call the neighborhood icon. That's the series of 3 houses, and the home icon. The home icon will always change based off of what site you're on. So mine says AJ Test Site for Real this time, and I can hit view my site or edit or clone. When we go to the neighborhood, however, and this will be important, especially if you're in English 101, Art 109, when you're working in a class site that you've been attached to, you'll have to, when you first log in, you'll have to go to the neighborhood icon and go to the site that is your class site. And this is a little bit different because typically speaking, when you're working with WordPress for yourself, you just go to the site that you're working on, which is cool. But when you're doing multiple sites and you're added to different sites here in your academic career at Western, go to the neighborhood icon, go to the name of the site once you've been added. So for instance, Art 109, yours is React Research and Execute, and click on Dashboard. And what that will do is it will change the dash, and you'll notice that the home icon now changes to React Research and Execute. And that's how you'll know that you're correctly doing your post on the right site. So I'm going to show you again how to change. I'm going to go to my sites or the neighborhood icon. I'm going to go down to where it says AJ Test Site for Real this time and go to Dashboard. And again, my home icon changes. So before we make content, let's go ahead and take a look at our site. Let's hover on the home icon and hit Visit Site, and that will take me to our site. Now, this is the theme 16. I pretty much hate this theme, and I'll show you how to change it after we make content. And this is kind of a philosophical thing that I want to start off with before we start going into WordPress proper. The difference between a website builder and a content management system. Website builder, kind of like Wix, Weebly, and Squarespace, you're building a website and you're kind of putting up things as you're kind of creating content. Content management system is in reverse. And this is where you actually create content first and allow the platform to best present it to you second. I like to use the analogy of, if you remember the first time you learned perhaps PowerPoint, it's really easy to go down that real big spiral of creativity, darkness, of adding every animation and timing and flying and transitions and not have any content on your PowerPoint whatsoever. But it's pretty. And that's how I kind of see a lot of WordPress. You really want to focus on your content first and pick a theme and features that best support presenting it. Because you can go to a website and it looks great and tells the person reading it nothing. So start with content first, and then we'll theme second. Because also, the way the WordPress works, if you don't have content, the theme's not going to be able to show you a lot of what it can do for your content if you don't have it first. I'm going to go ahead and go back to Dash, hovering over the home icon and go to Dashboard. And let's go ahead and go to Posts. Now we have posts and pages, and this is kind of another philosophical thing. Posts, every WordPress website has a blog. I'm going to go ahead and click on Posts, and it'll show me all my posts. And by default, you'll have one that says, "Hello world." Now, posts are dynamic things that you're writing about. It could be about different topics. The thing that I want you to remember is with every WordPress website, you get one central blog. Now, don't worry, you don't have to open up a whole bunch of websites to write about several different things. Please don't. That just makes a lot more work for you. Instead, the way that WordPress works is you write in one central blog, but you categorize everything so that you can have people navigate to each individual category that you write to. So for instance, if you're writing an animal blog and you got cats and dogs, well, cat people don't want to read dog stuff and dog people don't want to read cat stuff. So what you'll do is as you write, you'll create categories, a category for cats and a category for dogs, so that in your navigation, when somebody goes to your blog, if they click cat, it'll filter sort all your stuff and present only cat things to cat people, and the same thing for dog people. So don't worry about having to worry about opening up a whole bunch of sites and where you're going to blog to. You're just going to blog in one, categorize, and let people navigate. The second thing is pages. Pages are static instances of content. So for instance, when you go to a website, you might see an About Me page. You're not going to be reading or writing a lot about you, or if you were, maybe you're a little bit narcissistic, but that's fine. They'll make a category for that. And if it's dynamically about you, that belongs in the blog. But if it's just simply a profile page of you, where you're at, what you're studying, that type of thing, that's a page, not necessarily a post. Pages can't be categorized because a page is just a page. It's just a dumb page, a container that holds photos and gets you a link and gets you words. That's it. Blogs are posts, they're dynamic, and that's where you're regularly writing about things and that you have a lot more control over what that content can do and where it can go. So I just want to make that delineation before I continue. I like to start with posts because, again, you get more features that way. So under posts, add new post. So title of your post here. And when you hit tab, it'll go to your body. And when you do, you'll also get that permalink. Remember, posts and pages both have unique URLs that you can always submit to Canvas or Tweet or Facebook. You can always navigate people directly to a piece of your work. You can also edit it because by default, when you put in a title, it will just hyphenate the title. So maybe you might want to shorten it, sample. When you do, click OK, and that will commit it, and it doesn't change the title of your post, just the unique URL. And then down here, it's like a boiled down version of Google Docs or Word. One thing I want to point out is the toolbar toggle. When you first get in, you might have just a single row of icons. Hit this kind of double dock looking icon to get the second row, because that's going to be important for formatting. So what I'd like you to do real quick is kind of follow along. Let's do paragraph, heading, sub, heading, quote, stuff, photos, link. So when you type, you'll notice that the formatting is all uniform, and this is called paragraph formatting. And we can tell because of this drop down in your toolbar. Whenever you are doing anything in WordPress, be sure to specify what the content is. That's important for the theme because when we apply a theme, themes dictate what the font and the color and how big it is based off the theme. And this is important because you don't want to have every post have unique styling, because if you ever change your theme, then you got to go to every post and change things. So it's just easier to kind of bulk format. Whenever you type, everything is always paragraph. If it's not a paragraph, you have to specify it from the dropdown. So I'm going to select heading, drop down, and go heading 1. And we'll notice that 16 gives it this kind of big and bold heading. Subheading, and if you notice, I spelt heading a little bit incorrect. I've got capital H-E. Now, in your browser, Mac, PC, or Linux, if you right mouse click on this, you will get basic spell check, and really grammar check doesn't exist. I would encourage you to write your stuff, especially if you're doing a lot of academic content, write it in a proper word processing app and then copy and paste it in. That way you get that grammar and spell check feature. But for quick stuff, right mouse click when you see the little squiggle and you can do basic spell check in WordPress. Subheading, same thing. I can go through the drop down and go heading 1, heading 2, all the way out to heading 6. I'm gonna make this a heading 2. Quotes. Now, perhaps when if you're writing prolifically, and we see this a lot in journalism, maybe you have a pull quote from something that you've written above or below, and it kind of leads the reader into reading more about your content. In WordPress, we call that a block quote, and you can quote out anything by coming up into your toolbar. You have bold, italicize, and then block quote. And what this will do, and it's theme dependent, it will indent and give it a very unique styling based off of what that theme has as their quotation theme. So that's kind of nice if you're breaking up big chunks of text. Stuff. What kind of stuff can you put into a WordPress post? Pretty much anything. Now, to do so, we can do it as a photo or an asset that we upload to our site. So for instance, if I wanted to put in photos, I'm going to come back to stuff in a second. If I wanted to upload a photo, what I would do is hit return underneath photo. Perhaps that's the last paragraph that I was working on. And I would go to add media up here on the top. When I do, you'll notice that you have a media browser. Now, sometimes, depending on WordPress and internet, I don't know why, but sometimes you'll default to this insert from URL page. If you do, on the left-hand side, just go up to where it says add media. That's kind of an important thing. So you'll notice that in here you have a maximum upload, as I previously said, of 50 megabytes per file. And you can select files that's on your computer, or what I like to do is just simply drag and drop from my desktop or whatever folder I have. So here I have a skull and crossbones and a tree. And over on the right-hand side, once it's uploaded, I can change things like the title, caption, alt text, and description. So title this, I'm going to call this, I don't know, PNW Pirates. Caption, this will be a caption that goes below your photograph if you so want some. The black flag of the Pacific Northwest. Alt text, this is super important and also required in some classes like English 101. And alt text it allows for the visually impaired or anyone who's using adaptive technology on their computer, whenever they go to a website, they may be using something called a screen reader. And a screen reader literally reads what's on the screen and the location of it. Well, for graphics, unless there is alt text, a person can't hear what the graphic is. So alt text, you want to put in a little brief description of what it is so that it makes your site more accessible to more people. So for instance, I might put here a skull and crossbones on a black background with a outline of a evergreen tree. And then also for your description, I usually just use what I use for the alt text as the description. You can always flesh it out a little bit more in your description, but I typically just copy and paste whatever I use as the alt text as the description. Once I have all of that, we can hit insert into post. And when we do, we get exactly what we just did. We get the caption, we get the graphic, and we can click on the graphic now and actually make it bigger or smaller. Notice that as I blow this up, this was a fairly small photo. You can only blow up photos on the internet as big as they are. So if you have a fairly small photo, make sure you keep it at its native size, if not smaller, so that you don't get that pixelated look. We can also take it and have our word wrap around the left or the right of the graphic. And that just is important because if you want to have it below a block of text and have the text wrap around it, this is how you would do it, by clicking on it and using this pop-out toolbar, and that would allow you to add text around your graphic. So getting back to stuff, what is stuff? So for instance, when you're using WordPress for Western, You may want to use photos and GIFs and even documents. You can upload a document by clicking on the area that you want it to go to and adding a document and upload directly to your site. Now, what is acceptable is Word documents and PDFs. So let's say I wanted to upload a PDF. What I would do is just as simply as I did with a photo. I would drag and drop it into the screen. It will upload it, and if you notice, oh man, the PDF that I had exceeds the maximum size. So if you see this, you'll have to actually either make your PDF a little bit smaller or look at what you have in that PDF. And if you have some problems with making your PDF smaller, stop by the Student Technology Center and they'll be able to help you downsample your PDF if you run into this. But let's say we did have a PDF that did meet the size requirements. You'll notice that it will upload and you get similar options as you do a graphic. So for instance, title, test PDF. If you wanted a caption below it, this is a doc so you can learn. And again, I'm going to take that caption and use it as the same as my description. And I'm going to go ahead and hit select. Now here's an important piece of information. When you use the document uploader and you are set behind the firewall of Western, meaning that it's not publicly facing, what we're doing is we're using a previewer from Google. It's the same thing that you see with like Google Docs. And what this does is it'll make a window with your doc in your post. But if your site is not forward facing, if it is not public, you're going to see a lot of gobbledygook and not your document. That's okay. If you see that, that just means that everything is there, and when your site does go live and it's public, your actual document will show up. So don't worry about it. If you see the gobbledygook, which you'll understand in a second, that just means it works. You can come in and when you embed a document, you can adjust its width, its height, whether or not you want this to be downloadable. So for instance, by default, all users will be able to download your doc. Maybe you just want only logged in users, or you don't want anybody to download your thing. I'm going to say all users so you can see what the download button is, and you can actually change the text of the download button. So for instance, my doc, click here. I'm going to go ahead and hit insert. And when I do, I get this embed code. Now, what's the gobbledygook I was mentioning about a little bit ago? Well, let me show you. Over on the right-hand side, we have our publish module. I'm going to go ahead and hit save because I should be saving often. Yes, WordPress does save automatically, but as a technologist, I can't trust technology, nor should you. So save often just to make sure that your work does get saved. The next thing I want to do is hit preview. And what this will do is open up in a new tab in your browser, a preview of what you've done so far with the formatting of the text with the theme. And if you notice, here is the gobbledygook. But as we can tell, I can scroll in here. I can hit plus or minus to zoom in. I can break it out into a new window. And I can see my download link that says my doc, click here. So I can tell that it is working correctly. This gobbledygook just means that your document is here, but it's protected because we can't let Google come in until your site is public. So think of this as a placeholder. So this looks good to me. I'm going to go ahead and close out that tab, which is nice of WordPress. It takes me back to where I'm editing. And let's take a look at one other thing that I want to show you, and that is adding links, either a link as an embed or a link just as like a word that people click on and go to a different place. So let's say I wanted to make the word link a link. I'm going to click on it and go up to the chain link icon, and we get this drop down. Don't just start typing in the URL, click the cog. When you get to the cog, what you're able to do is you can pull content from your site that you've already written. So for instance, if I wanted to reference that there's a sample page on every WordPress site, I could just click on this and it will automatically fill in what that URL is on your website. If you're doing an external thing, like let's say https://www.bjbarse.com, I can just type it in here, regardless if it's on your site or if it is a external link. You may want to click this checkbox that says open link in new tab, kind of like the preview that just happened. I don't know about you, but I really don't like going to websites and as I'm reading and clicking and looking at different research and different things that they're writing about, having it kind of take over where I was originally reading. So by having this checkbox, it will keep your original post open as well as anything that you've linked off to. And that's kind of a nice user interface for most websites today. The only way that you get this is if you hit that cog. So make sure that you click the cog, and then if you want that option, click Open Link in New Tab. Once you do, hit Add Link, and voila, we now have a link to that website. Now, if we want to bring in an embed, because if you notice, I've talked about documents and I've talked about photos, not really video or audio. Remember, audio and video files usually are bigger than 50 megabytes. So you may want to use things like YouTube or SoundCloud if you're doing audio podcasting, for instance, or if you've done a video from the DMC and you're trying to do it and put it into your site. Once you have it up to a YouTube channel, let me show you how to bring it in as an embed. There's two ways. So I'm at YouTube now, and I'm at the video that I want to put into my post. Well, in YouTube also has a unique link for every video. And if we select all of that and hit Command or Control C on a PC, and if we go to our post and on a new line being that there's no other content there, and if we hit Command or Control V, wait a couple of seconds, it will put it in automatically. So you don't have to worry about doing any geeky embed code type stuff. But on the other hand, if you do want to do some geeky embed code stuff, let me show you. If I delete this, and that trick will also work with SoundCloud as well. So audio or video files, if you select the link, copy and paste it onto a new line into your WordPress site, we have a script that will take it and do the embed for you. If you do want to do some geeky stuff, what I encourage you to do is put a placeholder of where you want to put that video or piece of content. So I'm going to say placeholder -YouTube. And you'll see why I'm doing this in a second. I'm going to go back to that video that I wanted to embed. And if you don't know this trick, it's really helpful. Any YouTube video, if you go to share, you'll get this option for embed. And this is the geeky code that gets created when you actually ask for a video to be placed on a website. And if you go into this mode, you get some extra options if the creator allows it. So for instance, if you want it to start at a certain place in time. So for instance, I want my video to start 4 minutes in. I can, let me try that again, 4:00. I can add that little bit of code, and now when they come to my post and click play, it'll jump to that spot. And that's super helpful if you have a really long video and you're just trying to drive people to a certain segment. So what I'm going to do is hit copy down here in the bottom right hand corner. And when I do, I'm going to go back to my post. And remember that placeholder that we put in? I'm going to go up to the top right hand corner of my post. We have a visual tab and a text tab. Click text. And by having that highlighted placeholder -YouTube that I had in the visual mode, when we go to text mode, you'll notice that we're seeing all of the HTML that we're creating. So we have headings, block quotes, etc. But that placeholder that we had selected, we now know exactly where we need to put this little bit of code without really knowing any code. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Command V and place that bit in where that placeholder text was. Click visual. And now I have that video in here. And if people come to my site and push play, it will jump into that 4-minute mark immediately. So that's a really nice trick if you have a long piece of content and you're just trying to drive people to a certain segment. So that wraps up about all of the stuff that we cover in the content creation mode. Let's go ahead and look at the final things of organization now that we've got stuff. So if we've already saved a draft, we can hit Save Draft. Mad Eye Moody will spin its eye a couple of times, and voila. We can change that status. If you're working in a collaboration, you may want to change the status from pitch to either a draft or in progress or assigned, depending on if you're working as a group. You can also see the revisions. So let's say somebody made a change and you're like, oh man, we buggered up something. We needed to go back. We can browse revisions as long as you've been hitting save. And we can also predate and postdate your posts. So for instance, if you need to schedule something, you can do that as well. We can come down here and set a featured image. This is kind of nice if your theme supports it. And what this does is some themes will allow you to have an image next to the title and kind of a synopsis of your post before they go into the post. And that's what this feature does. Categories. This is the important part. We can create categories on the fly, such as, I don't know, tech, and maybe vlog. You can notice that you can add as many categories as you want to a post, or you can isolate it. So for instance, this is really about a vlog. Now, what I would encourage you, a little bit of logistics here. Don't have a whole bunch of categories. Just stick to the heavy hitting ones that you're always going to be writing. It makes navigation of your site a lot more manageable for you, as well as people who are reading and watching your content. Tags, these are the smaller topical things. If you do write about one-off things, tags are a really neat way of doing it so that you can come back to it. So for instance, I might say, I don't know, pirates and maybe a video. And these are navigatable, but also it kind of helps with people trying to find content if they search your site, or allows you to navigate to these one-off instances. But keep your categories svelte. You want to keep it to the big topical things. Tags are the small topical things. And once we're done, we can hit publish. Now remember, if I hit publish right now, my site is not public, so I'm really just publishing it for myself, which is the reason why I like doing it this route. Allows you to sandbox everything, get your content ready, make it look the way that you want, and when you're all said and done, you take your entire site and make it public later. It just saves you a few extra steps of having to go back to publish things if you haven't set your site up for private first. I'm gonna go ahead and hit publish. And now we have our first post. Now, for our second post, what I want to show is the new editor. If you remember the previous tutorial, we can go to settings, we can go to writing, and we checked this box that said allow users to switch editors, and we hit save. Big important thing to hit the save button. If we go back to our post that we were editing, instead of using TinyMCS, if we scroll down to the bottom, we get this block that we turned on called editor. And we can change this to block editor. And when we do, so once you do, welcome to Gutenberg. This is the newest update of WordPress, and it's pretty cool. And if you look at it, it also looks vastly different than the last tutorial. So for starters, our title is still there. And we can go ahead and if we click on the title block, you notice that permalink now shows up above the post, and we are able to edit it as we did before. We can come here and we can start writing my words, my way. And if I hit return and keep typing, you notice that now every time that you create a new paragraph, it adds a new block. And in these new blocks, this is where we get our added functionality. We can add new blocks by hitting return, by adding new paragraphs, or if we hover over a block, we get above or below the block a plus. And this is where we're able to see all of the new features that we're able to do in WordPress. So for instance, if I wanted to add an image above my post, I can just click the plus, hit image, and do the same drag and drop that I used to do before, and it will upload it here. Now, if we needed to make it bigger or smaller, again, we can grab the handles and make it bigger or smaller. If we need to write a caption as we did before. If we need to do alt text or word wrap, if we click on it, we notice that we get the same word wrapping features. If we hit the pencil, this is how you would get to the actual gallery so that you can change the caption and proper alt text. So that feature is still here, but it's hidden away after you've uploaded the image, as opposed to before, it would show up with the image. The other thing that you can do, instead of going into this menu where it kind of goes into the old WordPress, what I'd like to point out is the contextual menu now that floats over on the right. Anytime you interact with a block, this block toolbar will show up here. And you notice that the block toolbar will tell you what the piece of content is, the block, and it will give you the options that are available for it. So for instance, when we're doing paragraph stuff, we have our pop-up toolbar that allows you to do bold, italicize, and links like we did before. But also we can do new things like drop cap, that it will drop cap the first letter. We can change the font size if we want it to be bigger or smaller for each individual block. We can also do some color settings now, changing color. And if you're a geek like myself, you can add additional CSS classes if you so fit. But the other thing that we can do is if we go to and click on a different block, such as an image block, you notice that this now changes It'll tell you what the block is. It's an image. And this is where we can now add our alt text as we did before. So you don't have to go to the pencil icon. I like to just basically keep everything in this interface. And that's really what Gutenberg's trying to keep us doing, is staying here where we're creating as opposed to jumping in and out of different places. We can also do things like change the linking. So for instance, if we want people to click on this and have it go somewhere, we can go to the link settings and change it to the media file. If we have a custom URL, like if we wanted to take it to maybe a pirate website or whatever, or the attachment page where people can download the actual image. So this is all right here now, which is really slick. If I click off of any of the blocks, you notice that it switches over to the document panel. And the document panel is the thing that was always there even in the last version, such as where is it published immediately or future date. We can also say things like stick it on the front page now. So if you have a theme that has hero content, we can leverage that feature now by hitting stick on front page. We can add categories as we did before, or we can just simply check the ones that we want them to show up on, just like we did before. Tags, we can add featured image. We can set a featured image to this post. Let's add our skull and crossbones here. So I showed you that we can click on something, or click on a block and add it through the post or the plus. We can also add a plus up here on the top left. This is always here when we're creating content. We can do a search finally. So for instance, if I needed to do something like, I don't know, a column, I can just start typing and now I can find the exact thing that I'm trying to do. Now, you may want to just kind of click and drag. You notice that it doesn't work. You just click in WordPress for Western and it just drops it in, and we can start using that style as we see fit. Now, the other nice thing about Gutenberg is when you have stuff that's already created, let's say like this keep typing, man, I really wish this was a heading and not a paragraph. Well, all you need to do is convert it. If you're using a block that's a paragraph, if we hover over it, it will now give us this double arrow that allows you to change it, and it's based off of the context of what you originally created. So it's not going to change it to a photo because it's text. Maybe you want to make it a heading or a quote or a list or a verse. We can now just simply convert that block, and it saves you a lot of steps. And when we do, the block menu will change, make it a heading. We can adjust the level of what it is, or maybe the alignment. So working with WordPress for Western now using Gutenberg is a lot more intuitive because we don't have to jump between menus here and there. So if we wanted to change this image, what can it convert to? Let's find out. So we can do things like media and text, or a gallery. So if you wanted to have several photos, or a new thing called a cover photo. This is kind of what we see a lot in more contemporary blogging, where you have an image with maybe a heading going into a new section. So this is kind of a new feature that's really nice if you're trying to use images with text so that you can break up your writing. And again, if we didn't want that, we could always convert the block back to an image, and we don't really lose much of anything. So what else can we do within this new WordPress for Western? Well, we could start searching and finding things, or I can actually show you by clicking on each of the different elements what blocks are now available, such as audio and video. Again, you're still limited to the 50 megabyte, 500 megabyte per site rule, but now we have direct blocks for that type of stuff. Formatting, this is something that's been long asked for. Being able to do some things like adding a table or adding some custom CSS, or maybe you have a verse. We can also do things like a page break or an add more, or even better yet, add a button, because who doesn't like a button? So maybe you have a button that you're trying to say, hey, visit my YouTube or whatever. You can add a button really easily now within the new WordPress for Western. The other thing that I want to point out that this convert button will do is the block will have certain styles. This little style dropdown will also show up here if there's nothing else that we can convert something to. So for instance, instead of converting this button to, I don't know, a more buttonier button, don't know, it'll present block style instead. But if you ever want to know if you can modify something like a button or something that can be added text or change colors, be sure to either click the convert button or come over to the block toolbar and expand the styles section. That'll give you some extra stuff that isn't necessarily available for other pieces of content. And again, once we're done, we can simply hit Save Draft. Save Draft is now moved to the top, and it's also a lot more transparent. Anytime that you do stuff and you click off, you'll notice that up here where it says Save Draft, every so often it will auto save and it will tell you that it is auto saving. Or when we force save it, it will have the cloud icon and saving. We can hit preview just like we did before. We get a new rendering icon of it drawing what our post will look like. And voila, we can now see that stuff, including that cool button right here. I'm gonna go ahead and close the preview, and I'm gonna go ahead and hit publish, and publish will make it publish just like before. Now, if we go over to the cog, if you're not seeing what I'm seeing, if you don't have that panel, the cog will get you this side panel. So the next thing is these three little dots next to the side panel. When we click on this, you'll see that you have some view options. If you're like me, I don't like having the WordPress interface when I'm trying to create. So I might want to do full screen mode so that it uses my full screen's real estate as I'm creating things. If you need to get that back, you can just turn off full screen mode and it'll bring your side panel back from WordPress. We can also see visual or code editor for any of my fellow geeks out there that like to really kind of do things themselves without a WYSIWYG editor. We can also switch back to the classic editor. So if you've made a post or you have a post and you really don't want to use this new interface, you can hit switch to classic editor and it will take you back with the bulk of your content. You will notice if you use this conversion, some things won't work. If you're going to switch editors, commit to that editor. Personally, I would stick with block editor. A couple other things, if you're a writing aficionado, that's nice with the new Gutenberg. You notice where that plus was, we can do undo, redo, but also there is an inspector. An inspector will tell you how many words, headings, paragraphs, and blocks, and also the outline of your document. And this is super nice, especially if you have to have a post for a class site, for instance, that has a certain word count. You can easily now see it in WordPress for Western. I'm going to go ahead and go to Appearance, and instead of going to Themes, I'm going to go to Customize. Now Customize, it'll bring you to that preview of your site, and we can see what the active theme is, 16. Let's change that, because if you haven't gathered, I don't like this theme. Let's go to Change. And you'll notice that Western has about 229 themes actively available for you, and we can go through and see previews of what they are. So for instance, I like this one called Argent. I'm going to go ahead and hit Live Preview. And when I do, that preview will update as your site is, and this isn't live. This is just merely you kind of in the dressing room, trying something on, seeing if it looks good on you. And what's nice about going about WordPress like this is, now that we have content, we can do two things. One, we can see what the theme provides us, because not all themes have the same features. I can see I can change my site identity, but there's no tagline on this one, which is okay by me. I can also see what colors can be changed, like the header and background color. Header image. This is kind of cool because a lot of sites, a lot of people like to have images on the top of their site. I can add an image that I have uploaded, or again, I can drag and drop it in. I'm going to go ahead and just select this one. Maybe just come down to where the crossbones and tree is. You want to have a fairly big image to do this, because again, just like I mentioned before, if you have a small image, it will pixelate. So make sure you have a properly formatted image. Most header images on most themes, it'll tell you the size right up here. And this is really helpful, especially if you have this information and you come to the STC, we can show you how to set something up in like Photoshop that has the exact size that you need for your website. I'm going to go ahead and hit back. And the thing that I really want to focus on is menus. Okay, so menus, when you get started, there's only a default menu, which basically is any page that you create, it'll show up across the top by default. We're going to change that. Let's go ahead and hit Create New Menu, and let's give it a name, Main Menu. Depending on your theme location will say different things. It'll usually say top, bottom, left, right, or primary or main menu. Check that box, and that will override it so that we control our menu, not our site. Let's go ahead and hit Next. And now we notice that that menu went away. And what I'm going to do is manually add the things that I want people to navigate to. So if I hit Add Items, I can now see the content I've created. This is why we have to start with content first and theme and style second, because if we don't, we can't do much. So pages, I'm going to go ahead and hit add home, maybe that about me page. I'll add a sample page just so that we have something else up there. If I go to posts, my individual posts, those unique URLs, I can grab those if I want. What I want to do instead is do a category, maybe vlog and tech. Tags, I could do the same thing, pirates. And let me grab that hello world post. Once I have all that stuff, if I click over back in the main panel, I now see that those items show up in my nav. Now, maybe you want to have a cascading effect. Let's say you want to have a drop down. If your theme supports it, what we're able to do, maybe under home, maybe I want to have that about me page. If I take my about me and just simply click, drag, and move in and let it indent, you'll notice that our menu updates, and if I hover, I get that drop down. I can do that several tiers deep, but what I would encourage you to do is stick within the first and second tiers, because nobody really likes going like this on a website and going over and over and over. The other thing you need to bear in mind is how this might look on mobile. On the bottom of our panel, we can see that I'm in desktop mode. If I go to tablet mode, we can now see what this site looks like with its menuing, and we can see that doesn't look great. And so that's the reason why whenever I tell students to focus on your navigation, be sure to keep your menuing pretty simple. So I'm going to go ahead and re-indent these, move them back. A single drop down like this really works well on both desktop, on bigger devices, and super small devices as well. If we have everything the way that we like, if we need to reorganize things, we can merely drag and drop them in the order that we see fit. And once we're done, we can hit publish, and that will commit the changes that we've done to the theme. I'm going to go ahead and get out of this part of the website by clicking on the X, and it should take me back to dashboard. So users, I'm going to go over to our side panel, go to users, all users, and it will show you any user that is on your site. So for instance, you'll have yourself, but let's say you need to add somebody because you're collaborating. I'm going to hit add new. And I can start typing in the username of the person here at Western to add them to your site. Remember, you can only add Western folk to your site, and they have to have a WordPress for Western account before you add them. Otherwise, you'll get an error that you can't add them because they don't exist. So I'm going to go ahead and tap in my colleague Chris Powell. And I know that his is C. Powell. And I can start typing, and you'll notice that it's starting to pull actively from Western those user accounts, whether they've signed into our system or not. I can't stress this enough. Before you add a person, make sure they've signed up for a WordPress site beforehand. I'm going to go ahead and click on Chris. I can change his role. Subscriber is the default, or I can take him all the way up to administrator. Now remember, if you're working under only admins can have access to your site, this is how you're going to have to add your colleague so that you have equal power over the site. I'm going to go ahead and add him as an admin and hit add existing user. And when I do, I will get a prompt that says user has been added to your site with a green bar. Now I'm pointing this out because if they have not had a site on our WordPress for Western and you add them, you will also see a green bar, but it'll say user is unable to be added to your site. Why they have that green bar, I don't know, but green does not mean that it necessarily has gone through. You need to make sure that you've read that user has been added, otherwise they won't have access to your site. So that's a little tip. So that's how you can add users, or better yet, let's say you need to remove users. So for instance, if I need to remove Chris, I can just go to him under users and go to remove. It'll confirm, and he's now removed. So that's how you can add and subtract users. Last but not least, let's go to that settings and go back to reading. And this is where you would go from only admins can visit your site to allow search engines to make it go public, which means the site, that post with the gobbledygook, will come to life. I'm going to go ahead and hit save changes. And now our site is live for real. So I'm going to go to my home icon and visit site. And I can go to that post that we did. And if I scroll down, there is that PDF. And if you notice, the gobbledygook did indeed go away. So that wraps it up for this tutorial. Again, I can't stress enough, if you have any snags or any questions, my office is here in Haggard Hall. It's at Haggard Hall 225. I'm here 5 days a week. Or I have 26 undergrad students that are here Monday through Sunday, short of holidays. And we're here to help. You can find all of those details on the STC website, stc.wwu.edu. We also can do appointments for one-on-ones in case you need to have somebody specific to help you with your WordPress or any of your tech needs. So I'm AJ Barsay. You can also email me at barsaya@wwu.edu. Hope you're having a great quarter, and we'll see you next time.